we've been talking about what an argument is. Here's the definition. An argument is an array of propositions, one of which, the conclusion, is supposed to follow from the others, the premises. For instance, spinach is good for you, that's the premise. Therefore, you should eat spinach, conclusion. In the last lesson, we talked about what propositions are. A proposition or a claim, such as the proposition that spinach is good for you, is roughly the content of an indicative sentence, such as the sentence, spinach is good for you. This is something abstract, which is true or false, more or less, which we typically express or assert in words, and which can typically be expressed in different ways. There's always more than one way to say the same thing. Now, if we're to understand our definition of an argument, the next question is, what is it for one proposition to follow from another? It helps to think of a particular example. We would say that the proposition that Fido is an animal follows from the proposition that Fido is a dog, and not the other way around. Or the proposition that you shouldn't jump in front of speeding cars follows from the proposition that you don't want to get killed, and not the other way around. So with this in mind, let's consider what it is for one proposition to follow from another in this sort of way. Well, one thing it isn't, when we talk about one proposition following from another, it's not a matter of one proposition coming before or after the other. That couldn't be, because remember, propositions are abstract. They don't happen in time. So it just wouldn't make sense to talk about one coming before or after another. Now you might think that even though propositions aren't events that happen at a particular time, the act of asserting a proposition is another story. That's something that does happen at a certain time. I might assert one proposition and then assert another proposition. So the second assertion would come after the first. But that wouldn't mean that the second proposition follows from the first one. For instance, I might say, you should eat spinach because it's good for you. Here it's the proposition I assert first, that you should eat spinach, that's supposed to follow from the second proposition that I assert. So following in time is not the way one proposition follows from another. Nor is it a matter of what people think or tend to think. People are often mistaken about whether a certain proposition follows from a certain other proposition. It's also not a matter of cause and effect. Propositions don't cause anything, and they're not caused by anything. So what is it for one proposition to follow from another? We'll say that proposition A follows from proposition B if we shouldn't accept B without accepting A. Or to put it a little bit differently, proposition A follows from proposition B if it wouldn't be reasonable to accept B without accepting A. I should point out that sometimes when people talk about the relation of one proposition following from another, what they have in mind is something stricter. We'll say that proposition A follows deductively from proposition B if B just can't be true without A being true also. So now, in light of our understanding of what it is for one proposition to follow from another, we have a better understanding of our initial definition of an argument. Remember, an argument is an array of propositions, one of which, the conclusion, is supposed to follow from the others, the premises. And we learned that a proposition, or a claim, is roughly the content of an indicative sentence. And that proposition A follows from proposition B if we shouldn't accept B without accepting A. So now we have a pretty good understanding of what an argument is. The next question is, how do we recognize arguments when we come across them?